It's time to take your seat in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Here's your host, Mike Vaccaro.
Hey, thank you, Chuck. Welcome, everybody. Mike Vaccaro here once again in the front row. As always, it's JR Quitman, our creator, producer, and director behind the scenes. Episode number 34. It's our first active athlete. Yes, a current Major League Baseball player. John Brebbia is our subject here today. He grew up in Massachusetts as a Red Sox fan, went to Elon University, drafted by the Yankees, made it through affiliated ball, independent ball, and eventually made it to Major League Baseball with the Cardinals, and now pitching for the San Francisco Giants. He tells us our story, coming back from Tommy John surgery and what it took from getting released, going to independent ball, and getting back to Major League Baseball again with the Giants. He also shares a great story about Bill Murray, owner of the Charleston River Dogs, who he played for. He tells us about that story. Don't miss that one here today. A lot of good stuff to talk about with John Brebbia, relief pitcher with the San Francisco Giants. Man, first of all, I appreciate you taking some time off or time out of your schedule here. It's an off day for you today, and you're choosing to spend it with us this morning. So I certainly thank you for doing that, and really want to dive into your story here. And your agent, Joe Rosen, who was one of our guests early on in our podcast here, episode number 2, helped get us together. And I certainly want to dive into that relationship and how he helped you. But for you, you're a Massachusetts guy. You're on the West Coast now, but you were born in Massachusetts, grew up in Sharon, just outside of Boston, about 17 miles outside of there. What was life like early on for you, sports-wise, and growing up, and what eventually led you to baseball being your sport?
Gosh, yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I could hop on. Man, sports was always so cyclical, I feel like, for me, being and having all 4 seasons in Massachusetts and being able to go outside and for most of the spring and all the summer was definitely really great. But I always loved baseball. Baseball was always my favorite sport. I would play, basketball in the winter or something like that just because I couldn't play baseball. But there was never any draw for me to anything else. So it was kind of funny to see, like, I'd try and play baseball in the spring and summer and as deep into the fall as I could. And then snow would hit and, we'd have to kind of switch gears a little bit. I had my pitch back in the backyard that I could throw a ball into and it would fire the thing back at me. So I spent plenty of snow days doing that. But I don't know. It was, I kind of felt like it was the same for me and all my friends. We would just kind of tag along with each other and play whatever sport we could at the time, until, eventually got to high school and sports started getting a little bit more regimented and serious. And, then all the fun was gone.
Yeah, it becomes serious because you're looking at that end goal, trying to get that scholarship. And for lucky people like you, a chance to obviously get to Major League Baseball. Was hockey ever, you're in Massachusetts, you never played any hockey growing up?
I didn't know. That's contact sports aren't my thing. I was always like a pretty skinny. I was basically a twig. And anytime I even think about like just bonking heads with someone or shouldering someone into the boards, I think like, it's going to hurt. No, I'm not going to do that. I play a little street hockey, with the neighborhood kids, but other than that, I think it's about it.
So you went to Sharon High School through your junior season. Was baseball became your sport at that point? Were you starting to really focus in on baseball? Were you hitting, pitching as well, or was pitching starting to show through for you?
Doing both. At the time, I probably couldn't have told you which one I liked more or which one I was better at or anything like that. Looking back on it, I mean, it's probably pretty clear that it was pitching. Although I'm always so biased in my mind, like, oh, but I could hit those line drives too. But I'm sure, looking at it, it's like, no, John, that was probably terrible. Stick with throwing. But yeah, I definitely got more serious. Still had a ton of fun playing, obviously, and it was still kind of funny, those, like, especially early high school years. I don't know if it was just me in particular, or if it doesn't feel like it's this way anymore, but it never felt like a job when I was in high school. And I feel like, when I see high school kids now, especially in the off season where I work out, there's a lot of young high school kids that come through it. It seems like, like work, and they're like looking for and pursuing scholarships and a professional career and doing what they can to get there. And I felt like, for me, that didn't really enter my mind until maybe my junior year of high school, where it was like, oh, I think I might be able to go to college and do this. That would be cool. So it was kind of an interesting transition to like the sophomore junior year, where you know college recruiters started showing up, and albeit not that many. But I mean, just as well as anyone, you start getting those Florida tournaments down in Jupiter or something like that on the East Coast, and that's when you start to see a lot more talent, from all over the country, and it turns into kind of a now a competition for college roster spots.
Yeah, travel ball, I'm sure is, were you playing travel ball at the time as well as playing for your high school team?
That's a good question. Not really. I would spend a little bit of the summers. I think maybe my sophomore year was the first summer I went down to Florida, and played for a team down there just a little bit. And I did a little bit more my junior year. And then of course I moved down there for my senior year and played that summer down there. But there was definitely travel ball and Legion ball for a year or two. But it wasn't until I was on like those Florida summer ball teams where it started to pick up steam.
Well, we'll talk about that move to Florida. What led to that, and you going down there playing at Wellington High School in Florida?
Yeah, opportunity to try and expand where I could possibly play baseball after high school. It looked like staying in Massachusetts was, at the time, it seemed like that may have limited the opportunities I could get, where there was more competition for fewer spots in college. And by going to Florida, it felt like the right way to give myself the best chance possible to go to a larger variety of schools in different regions other than just the Northeast. Hopefully get people to games that are interested and think, oh, okay, maybe John could play for us. And try and get as many, eyeballs as possible. And also just getting better at baseball, because you can play year round. So, I mentioned earlier that, and the cyclical nature of sports in the Northeast, Florida doesn't have that. If you like one sport, you can play it the entire year and there's nothing stopping you. The occasional, heavy rain and hurricane at 4:30 p.m., but that's about it. So it was kind of kind of a perfect storm of being able to do what I love all the time and play baseball, and also be around people who have done it all the time, all their lives, and learn so much and try and get better. And hopefully there's people there that could take a look and say, yeah, we'll give them a shot.
And I would think, going from Massachusetts, as you said, cyclical, you're not playing all year round. Florida, you are. The talent has got to be better that you're facing, but you go 10-1, a .83 ERA. I mean, what was it about that? At that point, were you thinking, okay, maybe I'm better than I thought I was, going down there and facing some of that competition?
Yeah, it definitely. I wish I had been more conscious of my ego when I was in high school, because thinking back on it, I don't recall myself, having successes or having failures, and those successes and failures changing my mindset towards what was going to happen next. But if that makes any sense, but I do remember thinking that, as I played more games in high school and saw more people showing up to those games, I do remember it set in a little bit more that it was, oh, this is a real possibility to not just play in high school. I do still feel like I was mostly just focused on like enjoying myself and getting better and, having fun playing with friends. But it definitely, I don't know, maybe halfway through our high school season or so, there was that other section that crept in that was, oh, okay, I'm also not just playing because I like to play and I want to give our team a chance to win, but I'm also playing because maybe there's an opportunity to get more educated because of it.
And again, your performances, you had an 18 strikeout game. Do you remember that game and what it was like?
Yeah, I do remember the game, and all I remember is thinking like, this is crazy. Is this all right? I struck a couple people out. Is this going to happen again? And then it did. And then I was like, oh, cool. That'd be great if it happened again in the next inning. And then it did. And I was like, wouldn't it be nuts if it happened in the fourth inning too? And then it did. And it just it was this bewilderment that just kept growing and growing and growing. And I think it was with 1 out or 2 outs left, I think I was taken out of the game on a pitch count or something like that. We had someone come in and finish it. But yeah, that was definitely a game that I remember, and mostly because it just kept my eyes just kept getting bigger and bigger after every inning, thinking, is this real? Am I dreaming? What is happening right now? But it was a lot of cool, and it was a lot of fun.
So again, the year that you had there in Florida, obviously you're starting to get recruited probably more heavily. Take us through that process. What was that like? You obviously and eventually went to Elon University. So who else came calling and why was it Elon for you?
Yeah, I would say the high school season, and then summer when I played summer ball for the Florida Bombers. At that point, it was Hammer Time for a couple of summers, and then the Florida Bombers after my senior year. I would say that summer stuff is when it picked up big time steam. I think that's when at the time, at least, I think that's when a lot of college recruiting happened anyway. So, and you're always playing in those tournaments and stuff like that. It wasn't, crazy hectic or anything like that for me. I remember it came down to the last few schools were Elon, and Palm Beach Community College, which is now called Palm Beach Coast College. I can't remember. Shortly after I went to college, I think they changed it was no longer a Palm Beach Community, PBCC. I don't remember what it is now. And then there was I was like a throwaway 5% scholarship offer from Florida, which I mentally hung on to because I was like, oh, Florida, cool. But that was not didn't really make the final running. And I remember summer ball, Elon started to reach out a little bit more. Robbie Huff Settler, coach, was reaching out a little bit more, trying to kind of get things going, get the ball rolling. And, I wasn't crazy hands-on with a lot of the process behind how the college recruiting and all that stuff goes. I was mostly just, I would check out a school, I would Google it, read about it or something. And then I would rely on the people around me, my parents. Joe, obviously, was definitely the smartest person when it came to that stuff, and probably the person that I lean most on for questions and things like that whenever I didn't know what the heck I was doing, which was most of the time. And yeah, by the time close to the end of the summer rolled around, it was ended up being a pretty clear choice between Elon and Palm Beach Community College, which one I wanted to do. And a 4-year school at Elon just was the right fit for me. I wanted to go somewhere that I could spend a handful of years there. And Elon's a great academic program, which I always, at the time, I don't think I pictured myself as a serious Major League Baseball player. So I definitely remember prioritizing like, hey, where can I get a really solid education? And I remember Elon being like the number one place that could offer that, since none of the Ivies wanted me.
Yeah, none of the Ivies, but the Elon is
Yeah.
just a very good school, very good academic school, and good baseball school as well. Head coach is Mike Kennedy there, who was a former catcher at Elon as well. How did he help you in your progression? Because you played a lot. You had a lot of appearances, even starting your freshman year when you guys made an NCAA regional appearance. that year in 2009.
Yeah, Elon was great because it was such a competitive atmosphere and such a competitive nature. It was a really good baseball school. It was an excellent academic school and a really good baseball school. And there was no shortage of drive, like of people pushing each other and things like that. A really good community team atmosphere, which I think you can get. You can get into that in a lot of colleges. I think they foster a really good team atmosphere, and Elon was no exception. And it was. I had a pretty good experience there. It was a lot of fun playing with those guys. I made some really good friends, and it was just a fun place to, especially with Kennedy at the helm there. It was a fun place to be able to just get after it. You'd go head to head with someone in your grade in your class, and you'd be one starting pitcher on one end of a fall game, and the other guy, your buddy on the other end of a fall game intra squad, and you'd be barking at each other. You'd want to win because you'd want to go to study hall later and be able to talk smack to each other about who pitched better or who won. Fun stuff like that. And I think one of the really cool things about Elon, and especially about Kennedy's way of doing things, was he let you kind of take control of what you were doing. He let me make more than enough mistakes in these fall ball games and try and learn myself. And he also helped let me learn with other people too, with the rest of the coaching staff and with him. There's no shortage of advice, or there's no shortage of tips, or there's no shortage of things to try. But one of the really, really fun parts of Elon was being allowed to try something that I wanted to try, or do something that I thought was going to work. And then if it did, great. And if it didn't, be like, yeah, didn't work, stinks. Try it again. Try something else. So it was a really cool learning process, especially early on, to be able to trial and error things. And then, when you figure something out that might work or could work, you have the appearances and you have the time, and he'll give you the innings to work on it and iron it out. And being a good team and winning a lot helps too, because you can't really sit back and coast and hope that it works out. You have to, if you don't do well, you don't pitch. And losing, I don't know. I haven't met anyone who likes losing yet. So it's always nice when you're on a winning team and can kind of drive each other that way.
And if people don't know that are watching this, Elon University is in North Carolina. It's kind of just outside of Greensboro. So you go from Massachusetts to Florida to North Carolina. But then a couple of summers, you have a chance to go back to Massachusetts. You play in the Cape Cod League, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how important was that a step to getting you to where you are now? Because that's probably the premier summer collegiate league that a lot of scouts have eyes on, the players that are playing there.
Yeah, it was definitely like one of my proudest personal accomplishments, because I had grown up going to Cape League games, I couldn't even tell you how much time I've spent in Chatham, Massachusetts, going to Chatham A's games. So the initial goal of trying to get there, because it was a place it was a league that I idolized and watched growing up, was really cool. And then when I got there and I played for Orleans, the Firebirds, started playing a little bit, and that's when I realized, oh man, yeah, now I see why this is such a big step for guys to play at the next level, at the professional level, because there's people there, there's scouts there every game, no questions asked. There's always going to be, I don't know, at least 20 or 25 people there. I mean, it was pretty fun, pretty interesting to see. And then, you hope that you have success, and it's great because if you do, you're having success against some of the best talent in college baseball. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go I was in the Northwoods League after my freshman year, and then Cape League after my sophomore and junior year, playing for Kelly Nicholson in Orleans. And it was a ton of fun. For starters, it's a league. You're on Cape Cod in the summer, so how could it possibly go wrong? But it was super competitive, and it was, just like my college atmosphere at Elon, where everyone's kind of driving each other because the talent is so good. The Cape League is the same way. You'll get left in the dust if you're not trying to keep up. So it was a really cool place to be able to try and harness talent and use that talent against other people who will let you know if you make a mistake. So it was a lot of fun.
Having the success there and then bringing that back to Elon. I mean, your confidence had to be huge from that point. Again, going up against some of the best players, as you said, in the country, and then coming back, and obviously your junior year, you're outstanding, 7-1, 1.76 ERA. What was it? The confidence? What was it that really helped you your junior season?
That's a good question. Because I was pretty abysmal my first 2 years at Elon, which was remarkable that Coach Kennedy even kept giving me opportunities after a little while. I would love to be able to sit here and say these three things changed and these three things, made me better and made me who I could eventually become. But I think on like a micro level, like refining pitches, learning what I feel like baseball, probably sports in general, if I played any other sports, but I feel like baseball is just a constant what works and what doesn't work process. So the more you play, the more you learn what does work and what doesn't work. And my sophomore summer was just a year where I tried a couple of things and figured out really what worked well and what didn't work well. Prioritizing strikes, as crazy as it sounds, but no matter who's hitting, it's always a great idea to prioritize throwing strikes. And that was something that I remember learning and taking back to Elon. I don't think velocity changed really very much, but off-speed pitches for sure, trying to throw as many off-speed pitches as I could in the strike zone. It was all, small things that was that process of like, all right, let's try this. All right, let's try this. And I got lucky and a couple of things worked over the course of a 2 or 3 week period. And I was able to take those and sort of ride them through my junior year at school.
Yeah, again, outstanding year at 7-1. You were all Southern Conference. So Joe Rosen, I guess, is your advisor at this time, not necessarily your agent. And the year that you had, the success you had in the Cape Cod League, was it a no-brainer that you were going to leave? You were, see where you were going to get drafted after your junior season, and were you signing no matter what at that point?
Technically, I don't know if I would say no matter what, but when I was drafted my junior year and then continued to play my junior summer, because I didn't sign. I wasn't made an offer after I was drafted. The Yankees drafted me and then said, okay, go play summer ball so we can figure this out. So it was kind of a mental toss up, like, all right, and I didn't really know exactly how it worked at the time. I was like, they drafted me, but haven't made an offer. So what does that mean? I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone that's happened to. Most of the time, the guys that I know were made an offer and they didn't like it. So they kept playing until a better offer came along. And there I am sitting there like, well, they made it or they drafted me, but no offer. I'm just hanging out. So the more I played that summer and the more I kind of saw, talked with, or, Joe, at least talking with the Yankee organization to see sort of what direction we were heading. And the more I pitched and the more I felt comfortable pitching, the more realistic it seemed. Like, all right, I think I'm going to give this pro ball thing a shot. And it worked out to where once they did say, hey, this is what we want to do, Joe and I were like, oh yeah, okay, definitely. we were not I guess we had a cutoff, but it wasn't something that was, terribly big.
And it was a 30th round, pick number 929. I mean, I would think those numbers, to get from that number to Major League Baseball, the success rate isn't that high. Did you ever think about going back for a senior year, trying to get that number up, or what were you thinking at that point?
Yeah, I felt like I was pretty aware at the time that baseball's hard to break into anyway. So me waiting around an extra year to see if anything better would come along just seemed like it didn't feel right. It was one of those gut things where it was like, I don't know why I would wait any longer. Like, I feel like I had the success that I was hoping to have. So why try and, push it for more? Plus generally and again, maybe things have changed now, but I believe the junior signs are typically better compensated than a senior sign. So we figured let's not lose out on any options by going back another year. Um, and also just your classic once in a lifetime opportunity versus school, where school's great. I really do love school, but I felt confident going back to school at pretty much any age. Whereas I don't know if I could have waited. Well, I certainly couldn't have waited 10 years or 15 years or 40 years and called the Yankees and been like, "Hey, you remember you drafted me in 11? Yeah, I'm 62. I'd like to play. I'm going to take
I'm
you up."
ready now. I'm ready now.
Yeah, yeah. Like arm feels really fresh. So where I felt like I could do that with Elon. So it was at that point, it was like, let's play. This is going to be great. I love baseball. Why stop now?
And you did go back. You did graduate from Elon. So again, kudos to you for
Yeah,
doing that and fulfilling that. As you said, there was always an opportunity to go back, and you did that.
yeah, yeah. And it was a ton of fun too. Yeah, I think it ended up being. I always joke about it. I a 2015 or 2016 graduate after starting there in 2000. I think it was 2015 graduate after starting there in 2008. So my family always gives me a hard time. Here's the 7. It took them 7 years, but it was great. I got drafted, took a few years off, and then I would go back for the fall semesters. Didn't really know anyone, so it made school a lot easier. When you don't have a social life and don't play a sport in college,
Yeah.
yeah, I recommend having no friends in college because you'll do great at school.
Stay very focused, right? Very focused.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no friends and just Netflix and homework.
So again, 2011, you're drafted by the Yankees. I've got to think. Yes, you're thinking my pro career started. I'm drafted Major League Baseball, but it's the Yankees. Oh, you had to have been a Red Sox fan growing up in Sharon, Massachusetts, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I will never forget at the time I had enough awareness to know that, like, to kind of understand how the draft and the baseball and all that worked, to where it wasn't, like, as much as I wanted to be as much as I wanted to play for the Red Sox and, be the starting shortstop and a starting pitcher. That's not exactly how the draft worked, but I'll never forget getting um I was drafted during a Cape League practice. I thought the draft had ended for the day, so I, like, put my phone in my locker, went out to practice, whatever, and we get done, and I go back inside, and I've got 100 text messages, like 60 missed calls, something ridiculous. And I'll never forget a small handful of the text messages were from friends from Massachusetts that were like, "You're not going, right? It's the Yankees. There's no way. You're gonna wait, right? Or, like, are you gonna call the Red Sox and tell them that you want to play for them?" And I remember just responding like, "No, not really. I don't really have those types of options." As fun as that might sound, that's not how it works. But it was just really funny seeing. I got some hardline Boston fans that were like, "Oh, nah, John's not going. He would never go. He likes the Red Sox." I'm like, "Well, unfortunately, I'll see you guys later."
Yeah, yeah.
But it
You
was.
got to
I
put
think. I
those
think.
allegiances aside at some point, right?
Yeah, yeah. People definitely came around and were like, "All right, all right. He's just a little bit of a traitor, but I get it."
So you sign with the Yankees, and the grind begins for you. You start with the Staten Island Yankees, Charleston River Dogs, Charleston, and the Tampa Yankees as well. Is the grind as tough as they say it is in minor league baseball? Trying to going from city to city, riding those buses, and doing what you have to do to get to that next level.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say it is. Especially, so much of baseball is dictated on whether you're having success or not. If I put together a good couple of weeks, all of a sudden a 12-hour bus ride didn't seem so bad. If I had a bad couple of weeks, a 12-hour bus ride was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. But in either scenario, you're taking a 12-hour bus ride. Yeah, sometimes the accommodations weren't great. Um, Sometimes you had these wonky travel schedules. Sometimes you would go to a place that was just miserable. Because you'd get in late, there'd be bugs everywhere because you're playing all night games. The hotel's not near any food, so you've got to take a taxi or walk a few miles to a Waffle House because that's the closest thing, and you're just trying to piece together this road trip. But if you're pitching well, it helps a lot. It helps a lot, unfortunately. And when I wasn't pitching well, which was often enough, it made it a little bit harder and a little bit harder. But I would definitely playing in Staten Island. New York City's got more than enough stuff. And Charleston was a great. I was really lucky where the home cities I played in were fantastic. I mean, Tampa, Florida, Charleston, South Carolina, Staten Island. I mean, there's no shortage of great stuff to do around any of those places, but the minor league travel is definitely something that you don't want to be stuck with for too long, but it's baseball. So just about everyone is.
For the River Dogs, Bill Murray's part owner of them. Do you have a Bill Murray story? Did you ever meet him during your time with Charleston?
I met him a couple of times. There are a couple. There was one time he actually made it on a Sports Center top 10, or maybe even not top 10, but it was one of the Sports Center things because there was a huge storm and he was running around the bases in a bathing suit, sliding into bases on the tarp because the grounds crew has laid out the tarp, and no one's going to tell Bill Murray to get off the field during a storm. But hands down, my favorite was his spiel in Caddyshack, where he's talking about the heavy stuff's not going to come down for a while. I heard him during that same rain delay. I mean, it was just pouring outside, and myself and a friend of mine, Brett Garrettsy, were walking in the tunnel behind from the dugout to the clubhouse, and the umpires were back there, waiting it out, waiting for a weather report. And I remember Brett and I were stopped in our tracks because we heard Bill Murray giving that Caddyshack scene a run through to the umpires, like he was telling them, we'll be fine. We can play. The heavy stuff's not coming down for a while. And I remember thinking that was just it. I wasn't even laughing. I wasn't making a happy face or a sad face. It was just this, like, I was frozen. Like, am I really hearing Bill Murray say these lines that everyone knows Bill Murray from? Like, this is unbelievable. It was mind-blowing. It was really, really fun to like just be there and hear that. So that was really cool. But that guy, I feel like he's doing something crazy and silly all the time. So it was really cool being able to play and see some of that firsthand.
So you saw Carl Spackler in reality there. Right in front of you. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was unbelievable. And Brett and I looked at each other like, is this really happening? I don't know if this is really happening. And it was really happening.
Well, again, 3 years there, those different teams. Then, unfortunately for you, 2013, you released by the Yankees. So I would think for you, this is maybe the first time you'd been released, you'd been let go. What was that like? What's going through your head during that type of moment?
Why me? What did I do wrong? I've worked so hard. Yeah, I was miserable. I love baseball. I love playing baseball, and having a team call you and very politely, say you stink, get out of here. It was heartbreaking. Obviously they didn't say it like that. It was something along the lines of like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have room on the rosters for spring training for you. So we're not going to invite you. And it's like, but 600 people go to spring training. Can't you make it 601? So that was definitely kind of at the time, came out of left field, but it really didn't. Again, one of those things where looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. My numbers were fine in the minor leagues, but certainly not something where they should have looked at it and been like, oh, this guy can do something. I think the hardest part was disconnecting what I thought about myself and what they thought about me. It was pretty obvious on surface, on paper, they should really, I have no hard feelings about it because they made the right call. But at the time, I thought I had so much more talent than what I was displaying. I think that was the hard part for me, where it was like, but I can get better, but there's so much more. And obviously, I believe that, but they had no reason to. So it definitely hurt, but it also helped. It also helped me realize that, like, oh, okay, I can't just try hard. I can't just warm up every day the right way, and I can't just get all my lifts in, and I can't just be a good teammate, and I can't. Well, you can always be a good teammate,
Yeah.
but I can't just do these individual non talent related things and make it. Like, I have to get better, or else no matter what else I do great, I'm out on the street. So that was a fortunate lesson to learn at the age of 23 or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like it was something that was now, and 10 years later in my life, it was important for me to have experienced that. If me right now said that to me back then, I'd probably kick myself in the teeth, because it's like, go eat glass, guy. Get out of here. I want to play. So as much as hard as it was to go through and to experience, it was also something that I was fortunate enough to be able to take something from.
And from there, 2014, you go to independent route. So I guess no affiliated teams came calling. You go the independent route. Again, for you, it worked out. You got to Major League Baseball. You got back to affiliated baseball. But what were you thinking about at the time? You go to the Lemurs or the Canaries, and then you're traded to the Lemurs. So some great names in independent baseball there. But was there an end game in mind going independent route for you?
There was, and then Major League Baseball was technically the end game, but I did feel pretty strongly that I wanted to see my career out to the point where I didn't think I was going to get any better. And I don't know what that would have looked like. I didn't have a game plan for what the most success I could have looked like. It was really just, how do I feel about it? What does my brain and my heart and my gut tell me? I'm thrilled that I played independent baseball, because it was, in terms of baseball, it was the most fun I had had in a long time. It was really just, and I still loved baseball at the time. So I went somewhere where there was you weren't looking at rosters. You weren't trying to figure out, like, oh, well, if, so-and-so just got hurt, so what move are they going to make in the big leagues that affects me, or, that affects AAA, that affects AA, that affects high A, that now affects me. Like, how is this going to work? Am I going to get more opportunities? This and that. Like, that was out the window. And it was just a bunch of guys playing baseball, trying to win, trying to get better, but without any extra of the political or the business nature of it. It was purely go and play your best. And it's certain, independent ball certainly wasn't an easy career choice, because here I am saying, well, I'm going to just keep playing until I don't feel like I can get better. And then my career is going, like, worse and worse and worse and worse. And people around me are like, John, I don't know if you're getting better or not. So it was definitely kind of a tough thing to try and figure out. But I ended up, again, like, learning a lot and trial and erroring and coming up with a couple of things in independent ball that I felt like could make me a lot better. And by the time my second year of indie ball ended, I think it ended up working out. I was able to sign with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I would think you have to have a lot of trust and confidence in yourself, right? I mean, again, as people are telling you, maybe it's time to hang it up, this thing's not going to work out for you. Is that where maybe, and there hasn't been a lot of talk about it in the past, but now the mental game, the mental aspect of things, was that important for you to stay focused and have a good mental presence when all this is happening for you in the transition? And again, your dream is still out there to get to Major League Baseball.
I would say, to answer your question, like, a big firm, probably. At the time, like, the mental side of sports wasn't super prevalent. I will say that I think the Yankees were at the time possibly a little bit ahead of other organizations in terms of like taking a mental approach, but it certainly wasn't anything like mental health. I don't know if you recall, The Mental ABCs of Pitching was a very popular book for a while. And I remember having pregame get-togethers like once a series or so, and going over, a chapter or some information from one of those chapters in that book. And that was great. I think for me at the time, it was, it was very compartmentalized. I was like, all right, well, I'm not as good as I should be, so I'm just going to keep playing until I am. And it wasn't easy or hard to make that decision. It just kind of seemed like that's what it was. So I kept playing. And, it helped that I was playing indie ball with a bunch of guys who kind of felt the same way. Like they're just getting out there having a ton of fun. And, when I a little bit like I said before, when I started to figure things out and have more success and actually on paper start to get better, that's when it became a little bit more realistic that like, oh, okay, I knew it. I wasn't just wasting a ton of time. There was actually more in there. And I'm glad I was able to just kind of unlock that a little bit.
Yeah, as you said, you went from Laredo to getting signed by the Diamondbacks. Then you get drafted in the Rule 5 draft by the Cardinals as well. Double A, Triple A with them in 2016. 2017, you finally get the call up. What was that like for you? What was that moment like when you found out you were getting your call up and had that Major League Baseball debut for you in 2017?
Definitely thought it was a joke at first. A very cruel but very funny joke, to tell someone they got called up and then not actually call them up. That's right up my alley sense of humor if they didn't actually want me on the team. But it was a little bewildering, I think. At the time, when I was in independent ball, I more or less stopped thinking about baseball, pardon me, in terms of making it to the next level or not making it to the next level. And I started thinking about baseball in terms of what's going to get me better and what's not going to get me better. And obviously I wanted to keep going and climbing each level and all that stuff. But it was a lot more black and white in terms of my approach. So even in AAA, where I didn't have very much success at all in 2016, don't remember exactly what the numbers are, and I really don't want to because as I recall, probably embarrassingly bad. I know that I got off to a little bit better start in 17, and then all of a sudden it was 4 or 6 weeks of where I was pitching really well. And I think just because I was slightly older, 26 I think at the time, not a ton of 26-year-old rookies, at least not that you hear about. You always hear about the guys that are so-and-so is, I don't know, I think Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna were 13 when they played their rookie seasons not that long ago. You always hear about stuff like that. So at the time I was thinking like, yeah, I'm 26. I'm just kind of here. And I looked at baseball more of, hey, this is getting me better. Oh, this is cool. Oh, now I'm pitching better at AAA. Ah, this is great. And less of like, hey, I'm going to try and knock on the door of the big league team. So when I did get called into the office and they told me that, it was this weird thing where like, oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm here because I would like to play Major League Baseball. This is so cool. And I remember my favorite part, stepping out of the office and seeing, my teammates crowded around me, throwing their hands up in the air with excitement. That was probably the coolest part of it. That's when it felt really, really real, very real. But that's like a conversation that I'll never forget because that's was the point since I was 8 or 6 or whenever I thought I was going to be a starting shortstop batting fourth and the starting pitcher for the Boston Red Sox.
So you have that moment. Your next moment is your debut, May 28th, 2017 against the Rockies. a third of an inning, a quick appearance for you. But what do you remember about that moment, or do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I remember it. I remember it mostly because kudos to the manager, Mike Matheny. You know, it worked out like this. You know, I don't think he was trying to do this on purpose, but it worked out to where he could do this, and it helped a bunch. I showed up and didn't have to pitch that first game. It was a close game, so I wasn't going to sniff it. And of course, I had like the crazy early morning flight after a night game. It was actually in Sacramento, so the AAA affiliate of the Giants, is where I found out. So the next morning, I fly to Denver. Like I've got this massive headache because I couldn't sleep because I just got called up to the big leagues, and then I had a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock flight or whatever it was the next day. So I show up. I've got this massive headache. I'm like just pure adrenaline all throughout the day, my first day there, and I didn't have to pitch. And the next day, no shortage of adrenaline, but at least I had gotten a decent night's sleep in the nicest hotel I've ever stayed in up to that point too, which was also really cool. But I was able to, like get some rest. And then with 2 outs later in the game, they brought me in, to be honest, I don't remember if anyone was on base. I don't think they were. I think it was nobody on 2 outs. Don't hold me to that, but I was able to come in and I threw, I don't know, three pitches to Trevor Story. And he flew out to left field, which flyouts are oftentimes home runs in Colorado. So I was very lucky that it was an out. And then the outing was over. So I've always been appreciative of how I was able to get into my first major league game. Cause of course I'm standing on the mound, like, shaking so fast. I feel like the Flash. I'm shaking so fast, like, can people even see me? I'm jittering this much. So it was a really great way to be able to kind of get into a game and get my first appearance and get my feet wet a little bit. And of course that day, friend of mine, Paul DeYoung, had gotten called up and he hits a home run his first at bat. And that was like another cool thing to celebrate after I had got done pitching. So it was just like a fun day overall.
Yeah, as you said, always going to be nerves in those situations to get in, get out, do your job, successful job, move on to the
Yeah.
next. And, you stay with the Cardinals in the rest of that year, kind of back and forth with them a little bit. 2019, you're with them though, and you pitched in the playoffs as well. I mean, that's got to be a highlight for anybody, Major League Baseball, just to make the playoffs and then have those appearances. What was that experience like for you?
I think the first playoff game I threw in was almost like pitching in my first major league game. The atmosphere of the stadium is different. I think you can notice it or not notice it, but it's definitely different. It's louder. The entire time is louder because people are excited. You're excited to be there. So I remember, throwing in my first playoff game was like, oh my gosh, this is the playoffs. Don't screw up, idiot. It's on television. Everyone's going to know. They're going to hate you. But it was a ton of fun. And the playoffs is like that extra step of competition where it's, even though you've probably played that team before, it makes it so much cooler that it's now very much a do or die scenario. There's not 100 games that you're going to play afterwards to where you hope things even out and you can have success. It's very much, hey, you've got a half a second and you better be better than that other person in that half a second, or you're going to go home and you're going to watch the rest of the season from the couch on TV. And nobody wants that. So I remember feeling very alive. I remember the stadiums just quite literally buzzing with excitement, and you'd put your hand on a seat and you could almost just feel it shaking because the entire stadium was rocking a little bit. So it was the barn's rocking, as they say in hockey, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to pitch in that type of atmosphere.
So it seemed like you were just kind of getting your foothold with the Cardinals and everything was going well. Then unfortunately, Tommy John happens. Tommy John surgery for you. You miss all of 2020. Do you remember the moment of when you thought, there's something wrong here?
Yeah. I was pitching on the road at the Mets facility in Port St. Lucie, and I don't remember my exact pitch sequence, because I was mostly concerned about my forearm, but I remember throwing a pitch and thinking like, "Ooh, forearm cramped up." But the inning, unfortunately, was not over. I still had 1 out to get, and I wanna say I threw maybe 2 or 3 more pitches at that point, and I was, I guess you could say, lucky. I know some people that have Tommy John, they experience a lot of pain after they throw a pitch and it tears. I didn't have any crazy pain, but I it did feel like, my forearm was incredibly tight. So after the game, I did like an idiot. I was doing like forearm exercises. I did a little soft tissue work. To try and like loosen it up because I just thought I was extra tight. And the next day I show up and nothing had changed. It wasn't like a typical day after pitching. And that's when, I went into the doctor's office and they did all the tests to see, where the stress is and where it hurts and things like that. And I failed the I failed the healthy UCL test. And yeah, from there it was just all right. Well, this was fun. Baseball was fun, but now I'm getting surgery, so hopefully a team will want me, but if not, I had a great ride and I'll remember it positively.
It's got to be a gut punch though, because again, you start with the Yankees, you get released there, you go independent, you make your way to where you were, you get to the playoffs, and then this happens. Did retirement go through your mind at all at that time?
Yeah, a forced retirement, I would say.
Yeah.
I at any point during the Tommy John, from it happening to the surgery to rehab to after that, I never was like wanting to stop playing. If someone wanted me to play for them, I certainly would. But there was, I would say, the vast majority of time was me thinking like, this is probably it. This is, I'll probably be kind of pushed towards never playing again. And, at the time I thought, all right, well, I wanted to play Major League Baseball and I did. And that's really cool. So, I feel like some of the rehab process was just like coming to grips with that. And we tried a stem cell PRP shot before getting Tommy John. So there was a few months where I was rehabbing from the stem cell PRP instead of the actual surgery. And it didn't end up working, which is why I had the actual Tommy John. But it was kind of the same thought process through the whole thing. Like, yeah, not really working. Um, I'm a middle reliever. This is a high turnover position anyway. And I just remember thinking to myself, it was fun while it lasted. It was fun while it lasted. This was a lot of cool, or this was a lot of fun. This was really cool. So that it was, it was sad. It was disappointing. But it was also something where I almost like an independent ball where I had come to grips with never playing affiliated ball again, even though I
Mhm.
wanted to. I had sort of come to grips with, all right, I'm not going to play Major League Baseball again, but that's okay. I'm happy with what I've done so far. And I was fortunate to where that's not how it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, you came back faster than most people do from Tommy John surgery. You get signed by the Giants, and you're activated June of last year. I mean, what is that moment like for you? Was it almost like starting over, getting that debut again in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I would say that the emotions were close to the same, but the reason for the emotion was a little bit different. All the adrenaline and all the excitement and all the nerves were no longer because, wow, this is my first major league game. It was more, wow, I hope this elbow holds up when I try and throw this pitch in my first game back. So it was, excuse me, it was really exciting to be able to get back on a mound again after having so many months not pitching. And after throwing the first couple of pitches, and my arm didn't tear because I had rehabbed and prepared, and the Giants did a great job setting me up for as much health as possible in these games. I remember sort of settling down a little bit and as best as I could, jumping back into, the normal emotions and the normal approach of pitching in a major league game.
And the year that you guys had, not just you, but the Giants as well last year, as the season progresses, everyone's like, okay, they're going to fade, they're going to fade, they're going to fade. They never did. What was that year like? You come back and you're on a team that has such a historic run. Tell us about that and what that was like for you.
That was, even to start the season, where, I missed close to half the year just rehabbing, even to start the season, watching the team on TV and stuff like that. It was incredible. Because you saw all these guys or, in spring training, and thinking, oh, this is a really talented team. And it might sound crazy, but at the time I wasn't super familiar with a whole bunch of other baseball teams I hadn't played on. I'm very much a what's the scouting report type of person and how am I going to approach a game rather than, who's everyone around the league, so on and so forth. So I get to this team and I don't know too terribly many people. Of course, I've pitched against them and can remember a couple of scouting reports, but I remember thinking in spring training, like, oh, this is a really good team. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is really cool. And then the season started and everyone did well. Every single person did really, really well. And then they just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And it's like, wow, everybody is so good at baseball. This is really cool to watch. And then, of course, I come in and I am horrible. Just couldn't be too much worse than I was last year. So it was kind of funny to see just the dynamic of the team have so much success and my little pocket of misery doing really bad. But 107 games is just absurd. That is so many games to win, and to see the team do it, it really wasn't. It's not like it was a surprise that they were good. I saw them in spring training. I knew there was talent, but no matter how good you are, winning 100+ games is so hard to do. So to see a team go out and do it consistently and every month just be racking up W's is really, really exciting and really, really fun to watch.
And in maybe one of the toughest divisions in Major League Baseball right now, the last couple of years at least, with the Dodgers, with the Padres, the run that they had last year, the talent that they have on their team. So, as you said, win 100+ games, to do it in that division is pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's and it's funny. Every team in Major League Baseball is a Major League Baseball team, right? So there's never any days off when you're playing anyone. But when you come across teams in the NL West these past couple of years, it is, the Dodgers won, Giants won 107, Dodgers won 106, 105. It's hard enough for one team to do it, much less two, even much less two in the same division. So that I think that definitely lent to a lot of the excitement last year of like, holy smokes, like the two of the best teams in baseball are just going head to head 17 times, 18 times, whatever it was. So that was a lot of fun to watch, and to be able to break through as playoff contenders in a division like this, it's so hard to do, and it's that much more rewarding when it happens. And this year is no different. A super talented team and a super talented division, so it's going to be a lot of the same.
And for you, it was just a 1-year deal last year, but then you get re-signed this year. What does that say about you, do you think, and where you are, physically coming back from Tommy John and where you are with this team? It's as you said, very good, and you're a member of this team.
Yeah, I felt really fortunate that they wanted to bring me back. Largely because I just feel fortunate to be able to like wake up and put on a uniform every day. But it was cool. It was nice that they possibly saw me as part of the team, because of course no one loves me more than me, right? Like I think that I have the capability to be to keep getting better and to keep learning each day. I think everyone has that capability, but I was really excited that the Giants were interested, because I was interested in playing more, and I wanted to play on this team because they were so talented and because there's such a great coaching staff and players to learn from. So I was really, really fortunate to be asked back, and I love just kind of being around the clubhouse and being around the staff and all that stuff has helped me immensely, and I think they've helped me learn a lot. So it's, I would like to have as much success as I can, and hopefully I do. But either way, I know that like this is the atmosphere where it can happen.
You grew up a fan in the middle of the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. Now you're right smack dab in the middle of the Dodgers-Giants rivalry.
Yeah.
Are they similar? Are they different? How do you compare the two?
So with the Red Sox Yankee rivalry, I have only ever experienced it from the stands of Fenway Park. And the things you hear, it's intense. And I remember like the emotions of being involved from strictly a fan perspective were just so wild swinging. I feel that same sort of intensity now, Dodgers Giants, but it's not quite as emotional of an intensity. It's more just like you can feel the crowd. You can feel the passion of people. If you're in San Francisco, there's tons of passionate Giant fans, but Dodger fans show up. And then when you're in LA, there's tons of passionate Dodger fans, but Giants fans show up too. So it's really cool to see people travel from stadium to stadium because you get these pockets of fans no matter where you go. And to be in the middle of like a Dodgers Giants rivalry, it is really cool. It is very, very intense. And I'm a huge fan of the packed out stadiums, people screaming the whole time. And you get that big time. I was a fan screaming during Red Sox Yankee games. Now I get to hear, 40,000 of me in the crowd yelling at me. And it's
That's
very cool.
awesome. As you say, great atmospheres for sure. We mentioned again, you went to Elon University. Big name right now is George Kirby, who made his debut, maybe a month or so ago with the Mariners. But Joe West is an Elon graduate as well, the umpire who retired after last year. Had you ever had him behind the plate while you were on the mound?
Yeah. I would throw pitches 2 or 3 feet outside of the strike zone, and I'd look at him when he called him a ball. So I thought we had a connection, Joe. No, yeah, I remember, was it my second year maybe, running by him? He was in the outfield. I think he was maybe first or second base umpire. And I remember looking at him, go Phoenix. And he's like, and that was the moment I knew I wasn't going to get any special treatment as bad as I wanted it. But he's a super professional umpire. So, it's not like I was expecting anything. But a greatly expanded strike zone would have been nice. And I've had him back there before, but, he called it like he should have, which was a real bummer for me. It was cool to see him.
A couple of changes here recently for pitchers, and one of them is PitchCom. Are you using PitchCom, and how effective has that been for you?
Using it, definitely with the guy on second base, or if it gets really loud. Sometimes it can be tough to hear when it's super loud, but it's also just sort of faster to instead of sitting there putting down a whole bunch of signs or something like that, especially with runners on. Sometimes a catcher can just plug in the pitch before it gets too rowdy, and you can kind of get on the mound and go. I like PitchCom a lot. I'm sure there are people that don't, but it doesn't bother me I've already got a shield in my hat to protect me from line drives. So having the PitchCom on the other side doesn't bother me that much, having something in there. And I think just getting used to it, I wouldn't mind using it all the time. I also don't mind the traditional signs. It's what I've done my entire career up until this year. So I can do either one, but I do think PitchCom helps. At the very least, if you can shave off a couple of seconds in between pitches, may as well. Why not?
How about the baseballs? Have you seen a big difference in the baseballs the last couple of years, and especially the fact that they've cracked down on sticky substances as well? Is it a different baseball? Is it a harder baseball to get a grip with these days?
So that's I think completely anecdotal, but last year, for some reason, they just felt, or the last up through last year, they just felt really slick, and they almost to me looked like there was more dirt on them. Whereas this year, I almost feel like they're not rubbing them up as much, or something about them isn't quite as slick. I know they implemented a humidor. I don't know the specifics of it, but it's some type of, teams have to keep baseballs in a humidor, no matter what. Whereas I think last year it was 10, maybe 10 or 15 teams, and
Yeah.
this year it's all 30. So I would attribute the change in baseball slickness probably to now keeping it in a humidor, because I do think there's a little bit more consistency. Whereas sometimes before it was like, what is this, a cue ball? Like, how am I supposed to? And I'm just wiping sweat. Like, all right, let's see if I can not have it fly out of my hand. It feels pretty consistent so far this year. To be honest, I'm not crazy like keyed in on it each time, but I do think just in general, a little bit more consistency. So as long as guys aren't getting hit left and right by accident, they also shouldn't be getting hit on purpose. But as long as they're not getting hit by accident left and right, and pitchers have the capacity to be able to throw their best stuff, then I think we should be pretty fair.
I'll leave on this. The beard. It's not quite what it was in St. Louis, and I think you're not on Twitter, but I think your beard is. Tell us about the beard and how that took on a life of its own, especially in St. Louis.
Yeah, so it started when I was halfway through my first season of independent ball in 2014. I had been with the Yankees prior to that, so I was clean shaving. I maybe was able to go 2 days without shaving at most before it was like, hey, cut it off, shave it. So I was so used to just pretty much every other day just scraping away. And then probably about halfway through my first year of indie ball, I started noticing a couple other pitchers on the team had really big beard. Joe Birch, I remember, had a really big beard. And I was like, what's going on? Like, you guys growing out your beards or something? He's like, oh yeah, we're not going to shave during the season. You should join us. I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like fun. I'll try it. And then for the rest of that season, I didn't shave, and it probably ended up looking roughly like it does now. And then my next year of indie ball, I started off. I had the same pitching coach as I did in Sioux Falls that I did in Laredo the next year. So we made a little pact together, like, hey, we're not going to shave this season, right? And he's like, nope, definitely not. So we both clean shaved before the first game and then just let it ride the rest of the year. And it was just kind of like a little thing that was fun to do. So when I got to the Cardinals, I did the same thing in the minor leagues. And so what's kind of fun now is that I'll shave. It's the same routine. I'll shave before the very first game, and I won't shave again until the off season. I will. It's not technically true. I'll clean up my lip a little bit because it gets food in it all the time and it smells bad. But everything else I just kind of leave and let grow. So by the end of the season, it's obviously, because I haven't shaved, much longer than the start of the season. So we're seeing maybe, I don't know, we're probably close to halfway, right? Maybe a third of the way through the season now. So it's about the third of the size that it will be at the end of the year. And it's, it's a fun little reminder. Now at this point, it mostly reminds me of independent ball and how much fun that was. And, how instead of eating whatever we have for spread today, I could be eating, scraping peanut butter and jelly out of the bottom of a can, putting it on one loaf of moldy bread to eat for pregame and postgame. So it's a nice little reminder that, like, it's the big leagues. This is a lot of fun. Remember to enjoy it because you're here. Don't stress about it because you might not be.
The big question is, does the wife like it?
She is accepting of it. No, I think I think it's just become like a ubiquitous part of baseball. So I'm not even sure if she notices anymore. I can't imagine if I said, hey, honey, do you like the beard? I'm not picturing an emphatic, yes, I love it. but she's never, she's not negative about it either. So she's supportive. She's supportive of the beard and the process that it goes through.
There you go. There you go. John, again, I don't think you're on social media, or at least not on Twitter. How can people follow you other than, obviously watching the Giants games?
That's a good question. You can come on down to a game. On road trips, I bounce around to coffee shops. So I always have fun talking to people, and during breakfast or something like that. But other than that, that I'll stay off the grid as much as I can. So, you have one bad outing, it makes up for all the things you don't want to hear after having 10 good ones. So,
yes,
so, yeah, come to a coffee shop and I'll probably be there.
There you go. Yes, so social media could be tough to take after losses, for sure, for anybody, not just yourself. But John, again, I can't thank you enough for spending some of your off day time with us here today to share your story, a great story, and certainly one that hopefully those watching this will continue to follow you, follow the Giants, and wish you nothing but success the rest of the year.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was a blast.
Well, our thanks to John Brebbia taking some time out of his off day to tell us his story. Our thanks also to his agent, Joe Rosen, who was with us in episode 2 for helping connect us with John as well. A great story of overcoming, again, being released, Tommy John surgery, and pitching Major League Baseball, not giving up on that dream, and on a very good San Francisco Giants team as well. As always, we thank you for watching, for listening as well. Continue to do so, and be sure to subscribe. More great guests coming your way in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.